time once again for our community forum, and we're very lucky to have back with us live in the studios this morning Reverend Harriett Walden. Reverend Harriett Walden is founder and director of Mothers for Police Accountability. In 2013, she was appointed co-chair of the Seattle Community Police Commission, and she serves as a board member for the National Coalition for Police Accountability. And she is also host and producer of the Mother's Justice Show, heard Mondays at 2 p.m. on 1150 AM KKNW. Harriett, thank you very much for coming in and spending time with us again this morning.
Well, thank you for the invitation. And I became co-chair of the Community Police Commission in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I was appointed in 2013. Mm-hmm.
Very good. So start out, tell us about Mothers for Police Accountability and your motivation in founding that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's 27 years old. I mean, and back in August 5th, 1990, my kids were coming home from the Black Community Festival. One of my sons was in a car with three other young people, and my youngest son was in the house. I was not at home. The police stopped the car as it turned on 29th and Jackson, said they were looking for drugs and guns, and so they never searched the car, and it escalated to the fact that 4 boys got arrested. And they had never had a criminal record. None of them was. They were high school graduates on the way to college. One of my sons had a football scholarship on his way to play football at Redlands. And so as a result of that, I knew that we needed an organization that was standing up for young people because it was the height of the gangs activity. And lots and lots of young people was taking the position. I mean, the police was stopping them, putting guns to their head. They was spread eagle on the ground. And the young people was tired of being jacked, and that's what they called it. They're tired of being jacked. And they got, tickets all the time from going from Garfield across the street to Ezel's. They got the jaywalking tickets, and they were always being stopped. So anyway, and my kids kind of got beat up. They didn't get Rodney King knives. I can't say that, but they did get beat up. And as a result of that, myself and 4 of my neighbors or people that I knew, women, I asked them to help me, and we started Mothers Against Police Harassment at that time. That was our name, and we kept that name to about 1996, and then we realized that our work was more than about harassment. It was really more about accountability and all and areas that most people wouldn't even be thinking about. And actually, we were the first group in America to use the word police accountability in our literature back in 1990. Now it's a household name. It's all across the country, police accountability. Yeah, so our work is ebb and flow. Like right now with a lot of events going on, it's easy to organize, but you have to have organizing going on all the time in order to build bridges and to make relationships. And so we organize during the ebb and also during the flow. Yeah.
One of the things that you were key in bringing about here in Seattle was CIT training for SPD. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's back in 1996, Border Guard Mitchell got killed. He was an elderly man that lived on 24th and Jackson, right behind the Walgreens there, and he was having a bad day. I mean, and he was acting erratic, and I think he had denied the maintenance people to come into his apartment, so they eventually called the police. And he went outside. I think he had an air gun or something like that, and he got shot. And then a few years before that, an elderly man had gotten killed out at a Seattle housing building out in the U District. He was 72. And so it became really apparent to us that, the police is killing young people. Now we can't let them kill old people. We got to do something. So we, Mothers and the Gray Panthers, remember the Gray Panthers? Mm-hmm. Marge Luther, all those people. We all went to see Norm Stamper, and they weren't that impressed in the beginning about this. And then there was the man who held up the city with the sword. There was, that's right, all day long. And after that event, Norm Stamper in the police department was convinced that we were right, and we needed to have police officers trained to be able to handle people who were having a mentally ill crisis. And we went to Portland. First time I ever rode in a police car. I never did a ride along. They couldn't trick me to do a ride along. No, but I went down there with Assistant Hal Ferguson, who was the chief of operation. We went to Portland with some other people and met with the people down in Portland who had adopted the crisis CIT model from Memphis, because in Portland they've had a high-profile person who had gotten killed by the police, and it was a wonderful program down there. They had police trained to work with how to work with mentally ill people, and Oregon changed the law so that social workers with MSWs could actually hold and write an order to have people taken to the triage hospital so they could be observed for 72 hours. And the police that was trained in Portland wore a little something on their lapel, so when they were out working in the areas where people were homeless or mentally ill, the people could recognize that these were police officers that was trained. And so that model was adopted here back in the late 90s, and when Paul Shell was the mayor. It was adopted, and the city. It was supposed to be trained. All the officers was supposed to be trained, and something happened with that, and it was still just volunteered. And he had retired the nightstick, and so the police officers only had pepper spray as part of their so-called tools, other than the lethal weapon, the gun. And then Mothers was part of a less lethal option task force, and then we agreed for the tasers as long as they were trained with the CIT training before they got to training. And like all good things, if you don't bird dog it, it doesn't work as it should be. And I'm sure you might have been familiar with the case where they tased the pregnant woman because she refused to sign the ticket, and that was not proper use of the tasers. I think it went to the Ninth Circuit. But now that's why people don't have to sign tickets in Seattle anymore. They'll just give you the ticket. You don't have to sign it because of that case. So anyway, and then after the DOJ came to town, it was memorialized in the settlement agreement and the MOU, and it has been expanded. I think they have 40 hours training. The gentleman, the officer who was one of the officers out at Charlena's apartment, he had 40 hours training, and he should have had a taser. He did not have his taser with him, of course, and that was all in the newspaper. The other officer asked him if he had his taser. He said no, so I guess they just had to shoot her. But that's how we got the crisis intervention here, because there's too many people on the edge, and it's too many people who actually are having a bad day. And our motto is that you cannot kill everybody who's mentally ill or having a bad day. You must have people trained to be able to handle people. And now with what is happening in Seattle, we have so many people living on the streets, and so many people who are on the edge. And anybody can have a mentally ill crisis. The people at Oso, when the mountain fell down, had a mentally ill crisis. I mean, they were absolutely in a bad way, and so you need people who's trained to be able to handle people. And because I call it a mental ill crisis, because that doesn't mean that's your state forever. But at this particular moment, you are having a crisis, and you need to be handled in such a way that you can live through the crisis and not die in the midst of the crisis. And so we worked really hard with that, and really quite upset about the shooting. I mean, it's like, wow, after all these years, it didn't work. And we've had lots of incidents where it has worked, but when it goes bad, when it's not working, it goes bad badly. And this was, to me, it was bad. And so we're going to be really watching this case and connecting the dots, and want to know about how could the supervisor not know that the officer did not have his taser. It seems to me that there was something that's going on, and I want to know when the last time the chief or anybody has been to roll call. I mean, because if this is happening now, and the DOJ is still in town. What's going to happen when they leave? When the Hammer leaves, what's going to happen? See, the Hammer's in town now. You got the judge, and you know what he did to us the other day. So he said, not so fast, no green light. So that's why I'm real concerned about this case. Is there a lack of anybody who's watching? I mean, where's supervision at? So you can tell I got a lot of passion around the shooting of Charlena. And then the mayor in Minneapolis, I think she said that Justine didn't have to die, and we feel the same way that Charlena didn't have to die. I mean, it's a big race really is happening big time now since a black police officer has shot a white woman. And black officers have had a lot of restraint across America because they know it's a double standard. A black police officer knows it's a double standard, and he knows that any minute he can get brought up on charges or treated in a way that white officers are not treated. So this is an interesting case to watch, because if you do the stats on it, it's very few times in American history that a black officer has shot a white person and a white woman. Very few times, and then by this officer being a Somali, it's going to be even worse as people pile on to this and make it and blow it up. To be whatever it's going to be. Whatever it's going to be, it's going to be big. Is all I can say. Yeah.
So it appears one of the major barriers towards having citizen oversight here in Seattle and or any city is the police officers guild. Can you talk about what you see as the hurdles with dealing with the guild?
Well, what I see as a hurdle here is the city, not the guild. They've been at the table, and the management has been working for 7 years without a contract, and so over time. I mean, when I first started this, I actually thought it was the guild. I mean, years ago, and sometimes it was because it was in the times that the city gave up a lot when police officers couldn't get a raise. But the last 4 years, what I've seen has not been the guild or management, because the guild and management is part of the police commission. They've always been at the table. They've never not been at the table. They have actually worked on a lot of the recommendations. Now, some of them they did not vote for, but one of the things they did do is they gave us information, and they were telling us about police procedures and how things work. You might think things work one way, but if you're out in the field, or you're riding in the car, or you an officer, things might work differently than what the citizens might think. So they've always been at the table. The pressure need to put on the city. The city needs to negotiate fair, and to stay at the table. That's what the problem is in Seattle. It's not the guild. It is, and I learned that in the last 4 years. I did not know that in 2012. I did not. I was like everybody else. But for management to not have had a contract in 7 years, and the Seattle SPOG is working without a contract, and they did not leave the table. I mean, it's the city. And management has filed an unfair labor grievance with the city. That's how bad it is. And so I'm not being soft on the police. It's just what I've seen, and it's like, oh, okay, this is absolutely different here. But because you don't know, because the city doesn't tell the community what they might be, going in to work on, then you won't find out until the end of the negotiation that what you thought was on the table, that the city might have put on the table, was not even on the table. And so, but it's and then the guild gets thrown under the bus, and everybody is blaming them for standing in the way of police reform. In this city, they're not standing in the way of police reform. In Cleveland and all the other places, maybe in Baltimore and all the other places, that could be true. But that's not. They have not been standing in the way here. They gladly did the pilot about the body camera, and it's my understanding that they did another pilot recently and was hoping that they could negotiate this, and then the mayor issued his executive order. So yeah, yeah.
So who specifically in the city is involved in these negotiations? Is it members of, I had the impression in the past that some members of city council.
Some members of city council, some members of the mayor's office, and I think the city attorney's office has some involvement in that too, also. And then you get the people on the other side, the negotiators from the guild side. Yeah.
But it's all secret while it's happening. And
It
seems
is
to take
secret.
years.
Well, but actually, the city council has an ordinance there that people really don't understand. That people that we were trying to make that ordinance a little bit stronger and clearer, that before they go into negotiation, you can come to city council and kind of talk about the things that you want to see on there. And what we thought is that the city should also have some, what are they looking for? So people can kind of know what's going on. But it is bargaining. I mean, it is just like all the rest of the bargainings across America. It is secret bargaining. Once they go into a negotiation, it is absolutely secret. Yeah.
And over the years, they've, instead of paying increased salaries for police officers, they've instead traded away important facets for citizen oversight, things like that?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things is that we used to complain about that Pete Holmes did change is that they had their own law firm that I think that represented the police, and Ann Bremner was one of those was one of the attorneys for that firm that represented police. But now the city represents the police, as long as he's still a police officer. So that part has changed. But see, they haven't had a contract in years. And so if you don't have a contract, the officers, a lot of the stuff, they can't be trained up to the new policy, because the new policy, some of these things have to be worked on and negotiated on as a change of working conditions. And then they can, get trained on the new policy. So as long as they don't have a contract, then there's some areas where they need to, everything is not working together, not only for their safety, but also for the safety of other people.
So if you were put in charge of this whole process and and given the powers to make significant changes, what would you focus on?
Well, the use of force now under the DOJ and with the monitor, and also with the help of the CPC, that's probably best use of force policy that we've had in a while. All use of force has to be reported. And then we have the bias policy, just looking at bias and that type of stuff. And then the stops and detention, because before they would stop people for a long time, and it was years ago, it was just part of the harassment, because if a police officer stopped you and ran your license and you were there for over 35 minutes or something like that, and you're not being arrested, then that's a problem, because the computers are immediate. But I would work on community relationships, and also helping people understanding the policy. So people and also training, because like with Charlena, that was they say 100 pounds or less. To me, there should be another level of training when people size, taking the size of the individual. That what else type of training could have been there for them to use instead of deadly force? I mean, of course, they had the options of the taser. I mean, they still had pepper spray. I mean, they could have used a pepper spray and then rapidly took the children out of the apartment, because you're going to have to get the children out. But she would have probably survived. The children would have survived too, because you just get the kids out. You can't have children in a place where pepper spray is going off. And so I would really want to look at the training. I would go back and look at that training, and also dig deeper on biases, because in the 1916 dictionary, there's a word called negrophobia, he who's afraid of a Negro, and it's codified in people's consciousness. And also in the 1905 dictionary, it says to be black is to be terrible, horrible, and sullen like a Negro. and to be white is to be pure, to be pure like snow, and innocent like a white man. And so that's why you got all this stuff about the white woman being shot, because it's codified in the collective consciousness of people that that you have to fear the Negro, and then that the white man or woman has no blemish, and that's how this stuff, and that's how deep it is. And so I would really be wanting to work on looking at that more deeply, the biases, because they're so ingrained in people. I mean, you just walk by people and they're afraid, and there's no word in the dictionary for white phobia, because we have way more of the fear in the last 500 years than we have way more of the fear for our safety than white people do. Yeah.
You are co-chair of the Community Police Commission. What changes would you like to see there as well? Does the commission need more power or resources?
Well, it needs more resources, and of course now with we didn't actually get the green light yet, and so that means that there are some things that we don't know if we can go forward on yet. I mean, they're setting up the Office of Police Accountability and the Inspector General, and all of this is new resources. I mean, to set up a whole new office of police oversight. Before we had the auditor position. I mean, and now that auditor position is being expanded to be. So we have the resources that's absolutely necessary, and more people. I mean, we don't have enough commissioners to get the work done right now. I mean, we're supposed to have 15. We haven't had 15 in a while. We wanted to extend that to 21. There's been a couple letters. The chief didn't think that was a good idea. Neither Pete Holmes or now there's a letter that came in from Terrence, retired Judge Carroll also didn't think that was a good idea. But we think it's a good idea because there's a lot of work to be done. And even if you went to 21, and most times you're not going to have no more than 15 or 16 people at the meeting if everybody came. But it's a lot of work to get done. It's a lot of policy review, engagement out and engaging the community. And also, just getting the word out there and being that voice, being that place where the community know that they can come and actually be heard, to be heard. Now, we're different from Oakland and a lot of other places. We have a hybrid here between the way that we set it up, because a lot of places, the complete civilian review has not been working. I mean, because number one, it's hard to compel the to get what you need from the police, and that kinds of stuff. Plus, there's the budget. The strength of any oversight is can be killed by the budget if you don't get enough money for what's necessary to do the work. Yeah.
Yeah. They continually hold that over all organizations that are trying to make progress, it appears. So just a few minutes left. So how can people interact with the commission? How can people interact with your organization, Mothers for Police Accountability?
Well, the commission has a website. As part of the Seattle government, there's a website for the commission, and then, for mothers, it's Mothers for Police Accountability.org. It's on mothers. And the commission meets the first and third Wednesday, and all of that information is open to the public. We don't take public comment, but the meetings are open because it's part under the open meeting law, public laws here in Washington State. And the meeting is from 9 to noon. Usually we are in the Seattle Municipal Tower, but it's always on the website. And we have a Facebook page also. And they're doing a lot of tweeting, and then we do Facebook Lives also. So we have quite a bit of Facebook Lives at some of the meetings, and usually after we go to status conference. We didn't do a Facebook Live this past Tuesday, But we have a great communication engagement person, Minty, and she does a great job working on that.
I believe you even have a call-in feature where people can listen,
Yes.
not call in with
Right.
questions.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. They got all the technology. I mean, because we got a lot of people, young people who actually know how to do that and actually getting the word out there about on Twitter and all of that. So, yeah.
All right. So, talking with Reverend Harriett Walden, she is founder and director for Mothers for Police Accountability and also co-chair of the Seattle Community Police. Is it commission or committee?
Commission. We have 3 co-chairs, so I'm one of the co-chairs. So, yeah.
All right. And obviously, you've been doing this for 27 years.
27 years, and I'd just like to say before we end that we as volunteers on the commission has put in thousands of hours doing this work to be, and the settlement agreement carved out the OPA that piece for us, and that coming up with the policies and reviewing policies and oversight and all of this. It was just a lot of work, and so I just wanted to just acknowledge the commissioners and the staff for actually hanging in there, because it's been tough. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't want police reform. So, and it's not always the police skill; it's other people who you might think want police reform, but at the end of the day, they don't want police reform. So it's been a rocky road, but we decided to stick with it.
All right. Well, unfortunately, with that, we are out of time. I want to thank you very much for coming and spending time with us again this morning.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.